You are lying flat in a ditch somewhere in northeastern France, and it is raining. It is always raining. The year is 1914. You are a German infantryman. You have been issued what is widely considered one of the finest military rifles ever built, the Gewehr 98, designed by Paul Mauser, chambered for the powerful 7.92mm cartridge, accurate at ranges most soldiers will never live long enough to exploit. The rifle in your hands has fed armies, won praise from engineers across 5 continents, and will go on to influence bolt-action design for over a century. And in approximately 4 seconds, it is going to get you killed. Not because the action failed, not because the barrel fouled, not because the cartridge misfired, because of a metal handle, 3 inches long, protruding horizontally out of the right side of your rifle, pointing straight at the wall of the ditch. You are trying to bring the rifle up. The bolt handle snags on the lip of the trench. You yank it free. It catches again on the strap of your kit bag. You curse in a language that is not English. By the time the bolt cycles, the moment has passed, or the man who needed to die is now returning fire. This is not a story about the bullet that missed. It is a story about the handle that made it miss. If you've been watching this channel, you already know that the decisive moments of military history are rarely where the textbooks point. Subscribe now. We go deep, we go specific, and we go where the official record gets uncomfortable. You have to understand what a rifle bolt handle is actually for before you can understand why it matters. When you fire a bolt-action rifle, a firing pin strikes the primer, ignites the powder charge, and drives the bullet down the barrel. The empty cartridge case, now slightly expanded from the heat and pressure, sits in the chamber. Before you can fire again, you have to open the bolt, extract and eject that spent case, chamber a fresh round, and lock the bolt closed again. The handle is what your hand grabs to do all of that. Lift it up, pull it back, push it forward, push it down. 4 motions. Every bolt-action rifleman in every army in the world performs those 4 motions tens of thousands of times in training before he ever hears a shot fired in anger. The design of that handle, its shape, its angle, its position relative to the receiver, determines how quickly those 4 motions happen, how naturally they happen, and how many objects in the physical world can interrupt them. Paul Mauser understood this. He was not a careless man. When he designed the Gewehr 98, the straight horizontal handle was not an oversight. It was an engineering choice made for leverage. A horizontal handle sticking straight out from the receiver gives your hand maximum mechanical advantage when breaking open a stuck case. That critical first lift, the hardest part of the cycle, the moment the bolt must fight its own chamber seal. You can wrap your palm around it. You can apply real torque. The Gewehr 98 bolt, when it works as designed, is powerful, positive, and precise. Every engineer who ever examined it said so. It is one of the great mechanical achievements of the 19th century, finished just in time to be handed to men who would live in holes in the ground. And that is where the problem begins. You are not on a test range. You are not standing upright on dry pavement with a clean rifle and a clear line of sight. You are in the mud. You are in a ditch. You are crawling through shell-churned farmland in Belgium, and every meter of ground between you and the enemy is covered in barbed wire, fallen timber, broken brick, and the unidentifiable residue of 6 weeks of continuous artillery fire. The bolt handle, that horizontal metal projection, that 3-inch steel arm pointing directly sideways out of your rifle, snags on every one of those things. It catches on the lip of the trench parapet when you try to raise your rifle to fire from a kneeling position. It catches on the wicker walls of the trench itself when you press against them for cover. It catches on the wire strung across communication trenches. It catches on the strap of your bread bag, the buckle of your ammunition pouch, the edge of your gas mask carrier. Late in the war, when German stormtroopers begin operating in dense, aggressive rushes through narrow breaches, moving fast, carrying everything, crouched low, the horizontal bolt handle becomes a liability so well known that the carbine variants already in service with cavalry and artillery are quietly envied by the men in the assault detachments. Those carbines, the Kar 98A, the specialized short rifles, have a different bolt. The handle is bent. angled downward at roughly 30 degrees, swept toward the stock rather than pointing away from it. When the bolt is closed and the rifle is at rest, the handle sits close to the wood. It does not project. It does not reach out for obstacles. It stays where you put it. The stormtroopers know this. The engineers know this. The post-action reports know this. Nothing changes. Not yet. The war ends in November 1918. Germany has lost. The Kaiser has abdicated. The treaty that follows will limit Germany's standing army to 100,000 men, a constabulary force dressed in the clothes of a military. But those 100,000 men still have to carry rifles, and the men who design those rifles have spent 4 years reading the field reports. In the interwar period, the German Reichswehr, the stripped-down remnant army of a defeated nation, undertakes a quiet program of experimentation. They take 1,200 Gewehr 98 rifles and modify them. They bend the bolt handles down. They fit updated sights. They evaluate the result. The conclusion is not recorded as a surprise. The turned-down bolt is better, faster to cycle, cleaner in the carry, less likely to catch on equipment or terrain. The evidence had been there since 1914. The Army had spent 4 years bleeding the lesson into the record, one casualty at a time, and now, in peacetime, the lesson is being formally applied. This is how armies learn. Slowly, expensively, after the fact. The Karabiner 98K, the rifle that will carry Germany into the next war, the rifle produced in over 14 million copies between 1934 and 1945, has a turned-down bolt handle. That is not a trivial detail. That is 4 years of World War I compressed into a single angular degree of metal. Now you need to understand something that the Kar 98K's turned-down bolt makes possible, something that the Gewehr 98's straight handle makes impossible. Put your hand around an imaginary horizontal bolt handle. Grip it. Now picture a rifle scope mounted directly above the receiver, above the bolt, above the action, sitting in the ideal optical axis position above the bore. With the straight horizontal handle of the Gewehr 98, you cannot operate the bolt without your hand crashing into the scope or its mount. The handle sweeps directly through the space where a scope has to sit. This is not a hypothetical problem. When German snipers in World War I were issued scoped Gewehr 98s, 18,421 of them converted during the war, the rifles required a turned-down bolt specifically for this reason. The standard service rifle and the sniper rifle had different bolts. The same weapon, 2 versions, and the only difference was 30 degrees of metal. The Kar 98K collapses this distinction. Every rifle in the Wehrmacht's inventory, from the first day of the new war, can in principle be fitted with an optic. The bolt handle that enables this sits tucked close to the stock, out of the way, leaving the receiver's top rail clear. When Germany deploys scoped Kar 98Ks on the Eastern Front, from Finland down through the Pripyat marshes to the Black Sea, the solution to a problem first encountered in Belgian trenches in 1914 is quietly doing its work in 1,000 different tree stands and ruins and rubble piles across 6 time zones. You are standing now, in your mind, at the edge of a bocage hedgerow in Normandy. The date is June or July 1944. It is again raining. The bocage is a landscape that seems designed specifically to punish armies. The hedgerows are not hedges in the decorative sense. They are earthen berms, anywhere from 3 to 15 feet high, packed with roots centuries deep, topped with dense thorned vegetation. Each field is a box. Each box is a potential fortress. Each fortress must be reduced one at a time by men moving through vegetation so dense that units lose contact with each other in less than 50 meters. The Kar 98K's bolt handle is turned down. When a German soldier in a bocage foxhole brings his rifle up, the handle does not drag against the earth wall beside him. When he crawls through a breach in the hedge root mass on his elbows, the handle does not snag the root network above him. When he presses his body flat against the berm and works the bolt after a shot, the handle sits close to the stock, in the shadow of the wood, not advertising itself to every briar and thorn in Normandy. This is not glamorous. No historian records a hedgerow battle that was decided by bolt handle geometry. No after-action report credits a turned-down handle with a confirmed kill. The advantage is distributed invisibly across thousands of small moments, a bolt cycled without a pause, a shot taken that would have been delayed, a jam avoided that might have cost seconds that cost a life. But stand in that bocage hedgerow and try to imagine operating the old Gewehr 98. The straight bolt handle, horizontal, projecting, searching for anything to grab, finds the root ceiling above your head before you can seat the bolt. You have to adjust. You have to compensate. Your body position shifts to give the handle clearance. Your sightline breaks. Your hand goes somewhere it shouldn't. 30 degrees of metal is the difference between moving and stopping. The Soviet Union captures enormous quantities of German small arms beginning in 1941. They use what they capture, and their soldiers file opinions. The Kar-98K gets a mixed review. The 5-round magazine compares unfavorably to the Mosin Nagant's own 5-round capacity, but the feeding is more positive, the trigger is better, and the bolt handle, the turned-down bolt handle, is noticeably easier to operate for a rifleman firing from a prone position. In the German doctrine of the period, the rifle is explicitly secondary. The machine gun is the base of fire. The rifleman exists to support the machine gunner, to escort him, to protect him when he moves. This means that for much of the war, the German infantryman with his Kar-98K is firing from a prone position, working the bolt with his right hand while his left hand keeps the rifle stable on the ground. The turned-down handle sits directly within the plane of that motion. The hand does not have to rise far. It does not have to clear an obstacle. The cycle is nearly flat, up, back, forward, down, like a lever pump rather than a perpendicular crank. This matters in the prone. The Gewehr 98's straight handle requires a pronounced lift to clear the receiver, a lift that, from the prone, raises the elbow off the ground, breaks the stable platform, and interrupts the sight picture. The Kar-98K's turned-down handle cycles closer to the rifle's center line. The elbow barely moves. The rifle barely moves. The next shot is faster. There is a broader point embedded in all of this, and it is one that every military historian eventually confronts: the difference between a weapon's design performance and its actual performance in the conditions of use. The Gewehr 98 was designed on a workbench. It was engineered for a world where the rifleman stands, or kneels, or sits on a rest with clear ground around him and a clear mind. It was designed with legitimate mechanical virtues. The straight handle really does give superior leverage for initial bolt extraction, and those virtues were real and remained real throughout the weapon's service life. But design performance and field performance diverge the moment the soldier steps off the range. In trenches, in bocage, in the ruins of Stalingrad, in the pine forest west of Moscow in the winter of 1941. In every environment where armies actually fight, the rifle encounters objects the designer never considered, positions the test team never simulated, and time pressures that no specification sheet can capture. The Gewehr 98 straight bolt handle was not a flaw in the designer's mind. It became a flaw in the soldier's hands. And the army that created it spent 4 years learning that lesson, then spent 20 years quietly fixing it, and then spent 6 more years asking the fixed version to do the work the original should have done. There is one more dimension to this that rarely gets discussed. In close quarters, in a trench, in a house, in the tight spaces where armies find themselves when the battle refuses to stay at range, the soldier is often not using the rifle as a rifle. He is using it as a club, as a lever, as a tool to push something away or to drag himself through a gap. The rifle is a physical object with mass and protrusions, and those protrusions either help or hurt depending on what you need the rifle to do in the next second. A straight horizontal bolt handle in a close quarters environment is an additional catch point on a weapon already burdened with bayonet lug, sling swivels, and front sight post. Every projection is a liability. Every projection is a thing that can jam in a door frame, snag a coat, catch a wire. You are trying to move through a shattered house in a Normandy village. The rifle is in your hands. The door frame is narrow. You angle the rifle to clear the door, and the bolt handle, that 3-inch horizontal steel projection of the Gewehr 98, catches the frame. The turned-down handle of the Kar-98K, angled toward the stock, has roughly half the lateral projection. In this particular door frame, in this particular second, that is the difference between moving and not moving. Half an inch of clearance. That is what 20 years of lesson learning bought. The Karabiner 98K was the finest bolt-action military rifle of its era, and the turned-down handle is one of the primary reasons. Not the only reason. The shorter overall length, the improved sights, the simplified construction all contributed. But the handle is the reason that lies deepest in the design's institutional memory, because it was purchased with blood in the trenches of a previous war. Germany produced over 14 million Kar 98Ks between 1934 and 1945. Every one of them had a turned-down bolt handle. Every one of them was a corrected Gewehr 98. Every one of them carried, in that 30-degree angle of metal, the testimony of every soldier who had cursed the snagging bolt of the original rifle while lying in a French trench in the rain. Paul Mauser designed the Gewehr 98 in 1895. He patented the action in that same year. He built it for the world he understood. The world that came, the world of industrial-scale trench warfare, of dense bocage and ruined city blocks and frozen steppes, was not the world he had designed for. The turned-down bolt handle is not an invention. It is a revision. And revisions are always written in the cost of whatever the original design got wrong. Look at the Kar 98K one more time before you leave. Not at the action, not at the bore, not at the machined receiver or the oil-finished walnut stock. Look at the bolt handle. Note the angle. Note how it sits close to the wood, how it tucks rather than protrudes, how it occupies the minimum possible space in the world beyond the receiver. That angle is the sum of all the lessons that couldn't be learned in a factory. It is the geometry of everything the original design had cost, quietly expressed in metal that never catches on anything. The rifle doesn't remember the war, but the rifle shows it. If this kind of deep-cut military history is what you're here for, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and stick around. There's more where this came from.